Hello and welcome to episode 1 of maybe more, who knows, of the weightlifting wrap-up. I'm joined by Zack and Owen Murphy. This is going to be a good show. Guys, how are you both doing?
Great.
I'm doing good.
Yeah. We just got our new neon sign last week. It is, lads. I'm telling you, it's the best. It is just so satisfying to see whatever it is. That's real as well, by the way.
So guys, the way this is going to go is I've got a few topics that I've been speaking about on the news show over the last month, and I've just been reporting them somewhat unbiased, but I want to actually have some opinions come onto the show. So I'm going to give some opinions. Hopefully Owen and Zach are also going to give some opinions. And if people like this kind of video, we'll do this every month. Okay, so guys, I want to get your opinions on this first topic. So transgender weightlifting. There was a headline on Inside the Games. It said, Hubbard set to become first transgender athlete to compete at Olympics after IOC accepts rule change. So just to give a bit of background for people who don't know, despite not actually getting a total in the first qualifying period, Laurel Hubbard was able to make the Olympics due to the changes that the IWF put in place because of COVID. So that means that Laurel Hubbard is going to be the first ever transgender athlete at the Olympics. She's going to qualify in the continental slot. She took silver in 2017 at the World Championships. A couple of athletes recently have started speaking out against her. A Belgian lifter called Anna van Bellingen, I think, said that it's like a bad joke. And then she said, because I do believe that everybody should have access to sports, but not at the expense of other people. So more and more people have spoken up about this. Zach, do you want to go in first? What are your thoughts on Laurel Hubbard being at the Olympics and taking the place of, another woman?
Yeah, I obviously covered this on my channel, and the thing that I looked at primarily were the numbers, because I think we can join alongside the heavily political and charged on both sides, if you will, argument, or we can decide to look at this as weightlifters and weightlifting coaches, which is something that I feel like I'm a professional in and something that I'm an expert in. So that's where I felt like my strength was in weighing in. And if you look at what she was able to do as a junior with, I think it was a 300 total at the age of 18 or 19, 135 in the snatch and 170 in the clean and jerk, but it ended up being 165 or whatever. Her meet total best was 300.
And can I just confirm, we're talking about, this is pre-transition?
Yes, this is long before transition, right? So at 18. And for a super heavyweight male, that's good. That means you're a good weightlifter, you're a practiced weightlifter, but it's by no means is it elite.
Right.
There's not much other competition history, at least that I could find of hers, until transitioning when she turned 35. Yeah, 35. And then she competed in the a championship. I don't know. I think it was the Australian Open or something, and she won it. And then she was invited to Worlds. And those totals were 275 and, right around 270. And she went from being quite an unremarkable junior male lifter to the second best weightlifter in the world.
Yeah.
So that's where I draw my line, right? Like, and I guess maybe that's me just picking and choosing data. Maybe that's not right. But now we're seeing females, we're seeing women step up and say that they don't believe that this is fair also, which is something that I was kind of hoping for. And I think there's a list of females on her Wikipedia page who are pretty much against this. And there's a coach in Australia who's pretty outspoken about this.
Yeah.
So
I think maybe the reason for that is because there was another Australian girl who would have taken the continental slot.
Yes.
And would be going to the Olympics if it wasn't for the fact that Laurel's taken it. Owen, what do you think? Because Zach's point of being an average, mediocre super on the men's side, and then suddenly, albeit the Russians and the Chinese weren't there, but ultimately she ended up taking silver at the World Champs.
I suppose if we had come at this from, so Zack said from like a weightlifting coach point of view, which is obviously the first thing any one of us would have thought about. But if you want to come at it from, I suppose, if anyone listening who doesn't know who I am, would, like, a former life was a biochemist, worked in the pharmaceutical industry. So if you want to look at this from like a scientific point of view, a legitimate paper, Springer, it's a legitimate journal, came out last year. So it was titled Transgender Women Female Category of Sports, Perspectives on Testosterone Expression and Performance Advantage. Okay, so there was a woman on the research team as well, Emma Hilton, and Tommy Lundberg was also on it. So like Springer is like, Springer is a legitimate journal, you know, it's not a, you know, kiss me ass kind of journal. Basically, they followed a lot of different women and the effects of, you know, hormonal changes over the course of a period of time. And after 12 months, the approximate loss in muscle area strength was like 5% after 12 months, you know, which is obviously minuscule. It's absolutely nothing in comparison to the vast percentage difference you'd see across men and women. So like if we look at like the female world record in clean and jerk is 192 or something like that, is it? And like the super heavyweights
right now?
And the men... Yeah, what's the world record right now?
187.
Even if we take 193 and compare it to 264 or 266 for all time, you know, the percentage difference here is astronomical. Like if you give them, for the female, the allowance for the IOC admitted for testosterone levels, so most people would know like nanograms per deciliter, it's somewhere in the region of like, I think it's like 200 nanograms per deciliter.
No, 60.
60.
No, you're right. No, 200. No. But 60 is the hyper elite. Sorry. 60 is hyper elite for female. 200.
60 is a very, very high level for a female to have. Like it'd be
yes,
so,
right. Okay,
so
sorry.
rare for a female. Yeah.
Yes.
But the levels, the levels were set at somewhere around 200 nanograms per deciliter, which is... Yeah. That's probably within the range of what a low testosterone male would have, where you're looking at getting like TRT replacement, but a lot of those would still be even rejected from that in some countries, you know. So like if you just look at from like the evidence point of view, so you've got like the weightlifting point of view, from the scientific review point of view, from like a hormonal level, like it just flat out, like I'm as egregious and inflammatory as most people, but you know, on this point of view, if you want to take it seriously, like I think it is basically ridiculous. Like I just can't see another way. Like I'm not saying, I'm more than happy for Laurel to go to the Olympics, and if they wanted to let her compete but not count her result or something like that, you know, like I don't, like I have no qualms about her competing, but it's just vastly unfair. Like weightlifting is hard enough, weightlifting for women is hard enough, and trying to get new women into weightlifting is even harder still. So something like this that makes the news, like more plates, more dates had it, The Guardian had it. Like it's just not good for weightlifting. Like more female lifters. Yeah. A couple of years ago, I remember when the Irish Federation, you know, the funding, we were just at an annual meeting. The big thing that they were pushing for, the Irish Olympic Committee, was like, you've got to get more women in sport. You've got to get more women into weightlifting, or else you're not getting more funding. So it's a directive from national bodies to get more females into weightlifting. And if anything is not good for females in weightlifting, it's a man lifting in the female category, you know, for physically, right. Like, you know. Something
to add to that, you talked about 187 and world records and the best lifts. And I think, you know, Laurel's pretty much a far cry from getting anywhere near that. But one other point that I had was Laurel's chance, if she never transitioned, of being an A-session male were slim to none, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
And just because as an 18-year-old you go 135, 165, it does not mean you are an A-session male. And in fact, like I would venture to say the percentage chance of that is so low, astronomically low. And then going to be an A-session female, I don't care if you medal or not, but do you understand? Like that's one of my biggest qualms is like she wasn't even a good male lifter.
But you know, even we are taking, right. She has no chance to get to 187 or beyond that. Like how much of that has to do with the fact that she's 43 or 44? Like who's to say if she was in her mid-20s?
Yeah, yes.
Like there's a good chance she'd get closer to that, you know. There's like, maybe she's not going to get to 187 or whatever, like, but she'd certainly get closer than what's the best she's done recently in competition? It's like 160 or something, or 155.
The stuff in Thailand she did, or after Thailand, post Thailand, or it could have been Roma. She did 290.
290.
Seb's pulling it up.
So she's
I'm just putting it up now.
So it's getting better.
She PR'd her total. Yes.
Yeah. Like,
if she gets a 290 plus total.
Yeah.
With the group that's going in now, I'm sure Seb would know more about the group that's going to be there. she has a chance of medaling.
The most she's done is 285.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is
okay.
When we look at the people at the Olympics, it's like Li Wenwen is far and she's 50% above the next person. The next highest total is Sarah Robles, and the next highest with 290, and then the next highest is, I think it's joint between Laurel Hubbard and Anastasia Lysenko from Ukraine. So she could medal for sure.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, it's like, again, I'm not so concerned with medaling. It's the vast disparity between her performance as a male to a performance as a female. It's not even close.
You know, as well, like there's definitely a hormonal adjustment period. So like from the transition period, in terms of strength training, like any hormonal fluctuations, just negatively or very positively, if you have the good hormones, up your training, you know. So like if you go with the negative aspect for whatever route they went for her hormonal transition, there's going to be a period of time, and like it's an extended period of time, probably a year or two, where things are going to be in flux or whatever, and then eventually, you know, some kind of homeostasis comes around again, and she's going to slowly, it looks like she's slowly progressing again, you know. So another thing I think it probably is the weirdest part about this is it was mostly I'm the least woke person you'll ever find, but it was mostly men talking about this, you know, which I thought was interesting. There was stories of, say, people being suppressed, women talking about it, that they weren't allowed, that they were shut down from talking about it. Obviously, more plates, more dates was probably the biggest person. Zack made it. I did a bit on my Instagram. Just as a point of conversation, that is the most interesting thing about this, I suppose, is probably, it's unlikely a lot of female lifters would have felt comfortable, you know, speaking out about it.
And another of the benefits that I think that you get, you know, obviously to some degree the muscle mass is reduced and the numbers come down slightly, but you can't ignore the fact that, well, one, I mean, just tendon and ligament strength, but then also things like the psychological knowledge that you have been able to lift heavier weights in the past.
Yeah, that's
like
great.
If you have snatched 140 in the past, then trying to snatch 125, even years later, even as a woman, you know, it's significantly easier to force yourself under those weights.
But
so
look,
that's psychological.
Like, look at these.
That is the difference with elite athletes.
These hands on a female bar is cheating, like, you know what I mean? Like this fucking meat shovels on a 15 millimeter or 25. Like, yeah, you know, like you do. Archer and Oakley have talked about it. Tiantou have talked about their limiting factor on snatches in training was that they're tiny hands, you know. So like, people don't think about it, but when you grab a female bar, you feel like a fucking king, you know. Like, like at 100 kilos, like it's everything about that, like joints, ligaments, like her ability to resist tendons or training and stuff like that.
So I think then the final thing on this to wrap up, how do, you know, is there a good way to sort this out? And I've thought about this a little bit. I've done podcasts on it. I wonder if it could be something as simple as, instead of having weightlifting split by gender, you have weightlifting split by chromosome, almost. So it's XX versus XY, women versus men.
So there is, I think there is.
Is that
really...
like a gross misunderstanding of how?
No,
that works?
it's not.
To me, that seems like it would allow you to change gender, but your biological sex that you're born with would be the category you compete in.
I think the issue is you don't have like a spectrum of gender, like it's not like a bimodal domain or whatever, but you do have some outliers. So you would end up with random people like that again. I think there is cases off the top of my head where.
Do you mean of sex or do you mean of gender? Because a lot of people say that there is a spectrum of gender.
Right. Let's just look at the numbers. Like, let's just look at the numbers if we're going to determine how to compete and why we would do certain things. And the numbers are incredibly low of women who are these on the spectrum, if you will, of gender, and men who are on the spectrum of gender. They're incredibly low. And I don't know that it's ever occurred in weightlifting before, and if it has, there's only been one or two people out of thousands and thousands of athletes. I don't think a real substantial change is needed.
Yeah,
it's just that we're talking about it.
Yeah,
it's just that we're talking about it.
But do you not think that the reason there's only been one is because it's not that there haven't been more, it's just that only one person has spoken up. So now that maybe people are going to speak up, maybe it will be more of a thing, and so it is worth. At some point, you sort of might have to make a rule change.
I guess that's just. It seems like it's hard to know, and in today's culture, it's so easy for everyone to speak out about everything. I mean, we're doing it now, you know, and who knows if it's
I think
if it's legitimate or not.
In defense of the IWF, for once ever, it's an IOC prerogative, for this. So they were kind of their hands were kind of tied in this regard. They were told, there's the rules for every sport.
Let's not defend the IWF. Let's make that the final time. Let's make this the final time we defend the IWF in today's show. How about that?
There's not many opportunities for that. But in the once ever, it's not even. I don't even know if weightlifting could have done anything about it. I don't think they could have done anything unless they went through a massive appeal process. Maybe like it was the IOC that set those testosterone limits. So I feel like their hands are tied. But I think the one thing it would have been better, or not better. It would have been. I would have liked to see if there was more female lifters who actually had a stake in the game, because you're talking about one person. How often will this happen? It's kind of the thing where, not to bring this to drugs, but the way Seb, you and Clarence had a back and forth about doping and weightlifting. Zach, you've made a lot of great videos. We're talking about. I think the biggest thing with that is like you have to decide what sport is for. Is sport for nations to get medals, or is this really about the athletes? And I think sometimes we forget that it's about nations getting medals. But if we think about this in terms of individuals. Maybe once in Olympics, but that's still one Olympic spot for one female lifter who's spent 15 years, doing weightlifting to get a spot at Olympics. She missed out by one spot. Like, I think that is more tragic than anything. Like, that's that's so sad to think about that.
And it can't be understated that now there are women who are talking about this. And if there were women who were told to shut up, which I've heard is true, then shame on the federation that said that, because that is fascist garbage.
Wait, I have a question. If a load of female lifters came out and said they were okay with it, would you change how you felt about it? If our competitors came out, if 10 of them, if the top 15 came out and said that they were okay with this,
I don't think I would necessarily.
If the likelihood, that's a what if scenario that I feel would never play out.
But
I think sure, fine.
Yeah.
Cool. I think my feeling is, and I know we're going to have to stop in a second because we've got to all sort our cameras out, but my feeling is if the jury to some extent is still out, and it might be unfair for either the transgender athlete or the women competing, if we don't know which it is, we should err on the side of not making it unfair for the women who are already competing, and put the potential unfairness on the person who's doing the changing, who's creating the change in competition.
Yes.
So my feeling is, until people know more, we should just make sure that at the very least the women who are competing don't have something enter their competition that makes things unfair for them.
Oh yeah, it's like it's not an individual thing. No one's like attacking Laurel. No one's saying that she's a terrible person. It's the environment that let her lift in the first place was everyone's problem. Just to be clear about that, just in case anyone thinks we're attacking her as an individual. Obviously, nobody knows her. I don't think
we are. Yeah, obviously
no.
Not.
Just to be clear, because how people take things and run with them.